Well, thank you for having me out today. Like you said, my name is Nick Seitz. I'm with Firefighter Safe. What we do at Firefighter Safe, it's a training company I started 15 years ago. I was a firefighter paramedic here in the Dayton area, stationed behind the Dayton Mall for probably about 10 or 12 years before I started this business. Started out just doing kind of CPR first aid, and then it's grown into the company it is now, where we do every type of safety training out there. You name it, safety-wise, we teach it. We also sell and service AEDs, defibrillators, first aid kits. We do confined space rescue standby. Pretty much anything in the safety world we'll do for you. What's a little bit unique about our company is all of our instructors they're all firefighter paramedics doing this kind of stuff for a living, kind of a little bit of a different perspective. We don't just put a video in, hit play, and say, hey, I think this is how it gets done. We give you a lot of real world experiences and stories and things like that. So this presentation I put together, I have several presentations I talk about, but this is probably one of my favorite one. And where this stemmed from was this is, we would do fire inspections all the time, almost daily. We'd go into businesses and, do inspections. And one of the things I'd always ask them, I said, what's your plan? When something happens, there's a high probability something is going to happen. What is your plan when that happens? And I mean, almost everybody's like, well, we're going to call you. Well, so that's great. But, the average response times in city limits, even where I worked, was about 6 to 8 minutes. Well, there's a lot of things that need to happen and that goes on in between those 6 to 8 minutes. And that's essentially what this presentation, how it came about. And we're going to talk a little bit about what is crucial in those 6 to 8 minutes and some things that we could be doing and be thinking about. Just get prepared. In whatever capacity you're in the safety world, the whole point of being in safety is obviously trying to protect our employees, right? And unfortunately, even though we are doing lots of stuff, we're getting better and better at it. On average, 15 workers die every day from a traumatic injury, and there's over 4 million non-fatal injuries and illnesses every year. So it's happening. Even though we're doing lots of stuff to try to prevent these injuries from happening, PPE, training, all kind of new things. But unfortunately, every day, 15 workers are dying, over 4 million are suffering non-fatal injuries or illnesses. And so if we can't prevent it, then we need to be able to treat it when it does happen, all right? And so the things we're going to talk about through this PowerPoint are things like recognizing an emergency, deciding to help, safety or response team. So who's actually going to show up or do something within your organization if something does happen? What kind of trainings are they going to be? What tools are you going to be giving them and training to actually be able to do something? And so, time is so important in these scenarios. Once an injury or sudden illness has occurred, doing something, basically CPR, first aid, can make the difference between a lot of things. It can make a difference between rapid or prolonged recovery. Are they back to work in a couple of days, or is it weeks? Do they have to go on disability? Maybe they never come back to work, or it could even be life and death. All right, based on, time is a lot of times, especially with traumatic or even illnesses. When we talk about heart attacks, time's not on our side. So that's why it's so important. The first thing we have to do is recognize an emergency. And when we recognize an emergency, it's basically this. It's a general impression, is a quick sense of what has occurred or is occurring. And when we talk about recognizing an emergency, I think people take that for granted. Like, that would be easy, right? Like, I would see somebody that's hurt or that is ill. I could recognize that. But it's not always so easy. Like right now, if I walked out in the parking lot and I slipped on some ice and I fell on my butt, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to jump up to see if anybody saw me, right? We're not always willing to say, hey, I hurt myself, or I don't feel well. Maybe you hurt yourself because you didn't have your PPE on like you were supposed to, your protective equipment, or you were doing something you shouldn't. You were standing on a chair instead of a ladder because you're trying to be lazy. Now you fell and hurt. You don't want to go tell your supervisor that. How many guys go up to each other and say, I'm having a little bit of chest pain today. Think I might be having a heart attack, right? We don't do that. Actually, you think about it. If you're at work and you're having symptoms of an illness, say a heart attack, you're having some nausea feelings, having some chest pain, what do you do? Where do you go and what do you do? A lot of times people go to the bathroom. I can't count how many times I've done CPR next to a toilet. Seriously. Okay? So that's common. We go hide. We're not always up front and telling people that kind of stuff. So that general impression is something that, don't take for granted. If somebody's off, they're not acting right, you see something, happen, and even if it's a mechanism of injury, you see somebody get hit or fall, we know that could have caused an injury. And even when we go up to them and you say, you okay? And they say, oh yeah. Don't just be like, all right, cool, and just walk away. Like, we know that there's a high probability they probably got hurt. But again, we don't always admit to being in pain or injuring ourselves. So once we recognize there's an emergency, something happens. So say we hear somebody yell, and they're on the ground, there's a ladder next to them, so we can assume that maybe they fell. We have to assess the scene. We have to figure out kind of what's going on in the scene. And we do the scene, the number one thing always is the scene safe. You guys are number one in these situations, not the patient, you guys. Make sure that this guy didn't get electrocuted by a line that's, around, or exposed to a chemical or something like that. You're going to walk in and become another victim, and you can't help that person. And I just tell people, listen to your gut. If you walk into a situation, your gut tells you, man, like, something is not right. Then call 911. You still did something, but don't put yourself, at risk. But if the scene is safe, you're going to keep moving forward. How many patients are there? Is this something that's a mass casualty where I need multiple paramedics or multiple medics unit come in, and it's a bigger deal than what, I can handle, or even maybe the local fire department can handle? How many patients are there? And then what happened? What is the mechanism of injury? They fell off a ladder. They got hit by something. Is it an environmental? Are they been outside working? They're the streets department, or whatever. And they've been out in 100-degree weather working all day with humidity's out of control, and they're having heat-related injuries. Or is it an illness? Is it signs of a stroke or a heart attack? And so that's what we're trying to assess very, very quickly on the scene. Okay, we're not doing like a detailed assessment yet on the patient. This is like, we're doing this in like 10 seconds. Like, just, what do I see? All right. Then I'm actually going to assess the patient. Now I'm really actually talking to this patient and trying to figure out what's going on. Now I start my investigation, my assessment. And when I do my assessment on these patients, I always want to do a good head to toe assessment. Even if they're like bleeding from a leg, I start at the head when I start figuring out what's going on. The reason is the head can tell me a lot. Right? I should, especially like adults, I should be able to go up to an adult and say, hey, what's wrong with you? What hurts? How do you feel? And they should be able to answer that. If they can't, right there could be the problem, right? Their level of consciousness could be so low, they're having some kind of a bigger issue going on, right? The head can also tell me is, life safety things, like what's their breathing like? Is it too fast? Is it too slow? Is it labored? If they're going, I can't, that's important. Their lips starting to turn blue. Are they pale? Are they sweaty? Those are signs of shock, which can be fatal. So the heads can tell me a lot about what's potentially going on. Then as I go down, I do my assessment. I then work down the body to the toes. I'm looking for other things. I'm looking things for like bleeding, obvious injuries, bones sticking out, deformities. Obviously, like I said, if they're confused. When you're doing your head to toe assessment, and I see this a lot, I see this happen a lot, even in guys that have been seasoned firefighter paramedics, sometimes this happens. You get distracted by distracting things. So I encourage you, when you're doing your assessment, don't get distracted by distracting things. And what I mean by that is this. So you've got a worker, say they fall in the warehouse and they bust their knee open. And it's bleeding really bad, and you're like, man, I just had this first aid class. I know exactly what to do. I grab the first aid kit. I bandage them up really good. I stop the bleeding, and I'm feeling like really good about myself. Like I did that really well. But you did not do a good head-to-toe assessment, and you missed the fact the whole reason this guy actually fell and busted his knee open is because he's having a stroke, or he's having a heart attack, or he's having an allergic reaction, or he's having something that is bigger than this bloody knee. But you missed it because you got distracted by something that's distracting, like a bloody knee. So don't miss the bigger picture because of something else that might be grabbing your attention. Always make sure you do that good head-to-toe assessment. Now, all this stuff I just talked about, we still haven't even called 911. We are at the spot right now. Now we're deciding to help. So when we do that quick general impression, what's going on, recognize an emergency, evaluation of the scene, evaluation of the patient, that happens like within seconds. It's a real quick just, what the heck is going on, right? Now we're making that decision to help. And that's actually the hardest thing you're going to do, is make that decision to help. I mean, there's videos and videos, if you YouTube videos of, somebody that's down like in a mall or a public area, and people are just in a circle around them. Because the hardest thing to do is do this. Take that step forward. Lots of reasons we don't, right? And so deciding to help is the most critical decision a person will make, is whether to get involved when an emergency has occurred. And something I want you to know, and if you ever take one of our training classes, like our CPR, first aid, any of our classes really, when it comes to emergency management, the only way to do something wrong is by doing nothing. And we beat that home. The only way to do something wrong is by doing nothing. If you're doing something, you're increasing your chance of survivability, and that's what it's all about, all right? It is completely normal to be hesitant to help, right? This is not what you do for a living. You may have had years of training in CPR, first aid, emergency medicine type stuff, but you're coming in to do your normal day-to-day job, and all of a sudden you're handed this curveball of an event, right? And so you may feel like you're all alone in helping, and if you are, it's usually only for a very short period of time. You have other coworkers, that maybe other teammates kind of come, other bystanders that may come in, and then the EMS and fire, like I said, in city limits is about 5 to 8 minutes. It's going to feel like a long time, but it's not that long. You fear you're going to make things worse. Like I said earlier, the only way to mess this stuff up and do something wrong is by doing nothing. You're not going to make the situation worse. You may think you don't have a lot of medical knowledge. If you've ever seen, when they describe first aid, what's the first word before first aid? Basic first aid. It's basic, okay? It isn't crazy detailed, crazy medical knowledge and things like that. It's basic things to keep people alive until we can show up and do our things and docs can do their thing, okay? So you do not have to have a lot of medical knowledge. You're worried about getting in trouble. I hear that a lot. Like, what if I do the wrong thing and I hurt them or I kill them or, whatever. Well, every state has what's called the Good Samaritan Law. The state of Ohio has it. Every state has it. And what it says is as long as, to kind of summarize, but as long as you aren't doing something, purposely trying to hurt somebody, you are covered. If your intent is to help, you're covered. It doesn't matter if you're CPR trained, first aid trained, or not trained. It's not like you're going to be held at a higher level. Like, well, you just had CPR class 2 weeks ago. Like, you should have known better. Even as a firefighter or paramedic, for years of experience, if I'm not working, if I'm outside of work, I'm a good Samaritan. So they can't hold me to a higher level either. If somebody got hurt, they can't be like, well, you were a paramedic for 20 years. Like, you should have done better. I'm a good Samaritan. I'm just trying to help somebody out to the best of my ability. And Good Samaritan law covers everything: CPR, first aid, AEDs, any kind of like emergency movement, like somebody's in a car accident and you pull them out of the car trying to help them and maybe they get paralyzed or something. You are 100% covered, okay? So when all that stuff is running through your mind of all the reasons why you shouldn't help, because that's going to happen. You're going to get nervous. You're just going to be like, I don't know if I want to help. If one of those things that pops in your head says, I don't want to help because I don't want to get in trouble, that is not a legitimate reason not to help. There might be legitimate reasons. I'll give you just a quick one. Years ago, I have 4 kids. My wife and I were driving up from Dayton to Columbus, and we're going down 70, and we came across a car accident that had just happened. So a single vehicle accident, rollover accident, and just happened. The dust was like still settling, basically. No emergency equipment on scene. And I kind of slowed down. My wife's like, hey, you going to stop? You going to stop? No. I pulled my phone out. I called 911. I gave them a very detailed assessment of what I saw going on. Single vehicle accident. Here's what what you're going to need to send. But I was not going to pull off the side of the highway and put my family on the side of the road on the highway at risk. About 3 years before this incident I'm telling you about, I had at 675 and 75, I was in a ladder truck, and 4 of us were outside working on a car accident, and a semi-truck hit our truck. I'll never forget the noise that made. We thought we were goners. So I have a lot of respect for the highway. It can be very unsafe. So now, had I been by myself, maybe a different story. I don't care if my car sits over there, I'll go over and help. But I wasn't going to put my family at risk. So I'm not saying that every situation you are going to have to do something. You have to evaluate it. But if one of the reasons is I'm not doing something because I want to get in trouble, that's not necessarily a legitimate reason to not do something. Now, what do I do now? So I've done all this stuff, and I haven't even called 911 yet. So now I am calling 911. I've done my assessment. I understand the scene's safe. I know something's going on with this person. They need help, and now I'm calling 911. Make sure someone calls, okay? Especially this big group of people, because everybody kind of assumes somebody else is calling. I was stationed behind the Dayton Mall for years, and we would have major incidents happen, car accidents and things, and everybody would be on their phone. But nobody calls 911. They're on the phone with their spouses or their friends, or they're Facebook Living or TikToking or something. I don't know what the hell they're doing with it. But nobody's calling 911. So make sure somebody calls and you know that they've called. And then so when you call 911, they're good about asking a lot of questions, but there's 2 things you're always going to have to tell them. Number 1 is location. Where the heck are you at? And that could consist of a lot of things. Business name, south side of the building, loading dock, 3rd floor, I'm a couple hundred yards past the pavilion in the park, or whatever it is. As much detail as you possibly can give us of where you're at is very important. If we can't find you, we can't help you, especially if you have a big facility. There is nothing better than rolling into a large campus or big facility and having somebody out front waving us in. Because, my stress level is going to drop immediately. Okay, I'm going to know how to get to this person. Because we are trained, unless told otherwise, we are going to go to the main entrance. And if you have a big building, and I get to the main entrance, and I take my cot out, I unload all my equipment, but they're at the very back of the building by the loading dock, that's going to delay care. So again, communication is such a big deal, right? If we can't find you, we can't help you. And I can tell you one thing, I was an officer for a lot of my career, meaning by that was I was in the right front seat of the fire truck. And one of the things I had to do was read the map book. I told my driver where to go, basically, and kind of prepared for the call and what we were getting ourselves into. And I can tell you this, the one thing that scared me the most on the way to calls, it really even wasn't so much like what we were about to get ourselves into. That didn't necessarily scare me. What scared me was not being able to find you guys if you needed our help. So making sure you guys have, location and stuff passed on is very important. And then what's going on? 911 answers for everything, right? Shootings and car accidents and fires and cats and trees, you name it, they answer for it, right? So tell them what's going on, not crazy detail. Hey, I got a middle-aged guy that's complaining of some chest pain. He's kind of sweaty, he's kind of in and out of consciousness, whatever. And again, they're going to ask you questions, okay? As much detail as you possibly can give. What your general impression was, kind of what you saw when you first got there. That is everything we've already been doing, passing that kind of stuff on.
Emergency. Yes, please help me. My husband is falling, and he's holding his chest. I don't know what to do. Please come. I need your address, ma'am. Oh my God. Okay, I live at 1375 Orange Street. I think he's still breathing, but y'all need to hurry up fast. 1375 Orange Street? Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'm dispatching emergency. He's holding his chest. Okay, I'm dispatching emergency personnel, and they'll be there as soon as possible. Oh my God, please hurry. Please hurry. Thank you. Please hurry. 911 emergency. Oh my God, where are you guys at? He's on the floor. He's turned blue. He's dying. Oh my God. Okay, ma'am. I'm scheduling the paramedics right now. Oh, honey, please hold on. They're coming. Hold on, please, honey. Ma'am, they're having difficulty finding your house. What? I live at 1375 Orange Street. They're at the intersection at Palm and Orange Street. Where? They're at the intersection of Palm and Orange Street. Oh, my God, that's too far. Please hurry, please hurry. I don't know what to do. He stopped breathing. He's blue. I don't know what to do. Please help me.
If we can't find you, we can't help you, right? And so that's something, I know this is, obviously work related, but something I want you to do tonight when you guys get home is take a look at your address at home. Can it be seen from both directions? Can it be seen clearly at night? The last thing you want, I'm telling you, even from, we don't want to have to pass your house multiple times when you need us. That's the last thing you guys want to see either. So, just double check that. So now what? The average response time for fire departments, and this is in city limits, it could be double or triple this if you live out in the country. But average time is about 7 to 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. So we need to alert others. Somebody's having issues. We want to basically, get our team. Hey, I need help. I need people to start grabbing equipment so we can start helping this person. We got to start beginning treatment, start using things like AEDs or first aid kits, whatever the situation is. But ultimately, we have to do something. You can see here, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but that average response time, and even they talked about in that video, it just slowly goes down as the time passes. It's so important to jump in and intervene. So, who is going to respond within your organization? So a lot of companies will have response teams. They may pick a group of people. Maybe they won't even identify them that, but they'll say, I'm going to train 15 people to have all this so they can respond. Some people have very, very formal response teams. So when you have your response team, who makes up your team? Is it going to be people that volunteer, or are you forcing them to? Because I understand, in some agencies, like you want maybe supervisors or management to be part of the team, but also you want to make sure that it's people that want to be on the team. Because if you have somebody that's reluctant to do this kind of stuff, guess what happens when it happens? They're not going to do it. It's just how it is. They're not going to step up if they're already not really wanting to do it. Okay, so get people that actually want to help somebody else out. They're comfortable putting their hands on somebody else in an emergency. Those things are important. All right. So who makes up your team? What kind of training are you providing them? They need to make sure that they're obviously trained. You're only as good as the training you have, and you're really only as good as the tools you have. Even as a firefighter paramedic with years of experience, and I mean, I'm like a pretty good paramedic too. And so, no, I'm joking. I'm only as good as the tools I have, Lo. Really. Like right now, if somebody went into cardiac arrest, I could do chest compressions and some airway stuff. That's it. But give me a cardiac monitor, give me some airway supplies, give me some drugs. It's a whole different ballgame, right? Same thing for you guys. Give you an AED. It's a whole different ballgame. All right, so you need to have the right tools. I put on here pride and reward. This is more especially for, even just for not even big response teams. A couple of things with this is when these people step up to kind of do it, have a team. I love that when they can kind of start helping the culture change within companies even, because they're the ones that people look up to when it comes to like PPE and things like that. So, because they have to be wearing it. It's like if you're part of the Seitz team, you should be doing safe stuff, right? And so they can sometimes help set that culture or kind of lead that culture in a direction. So it's kind of good when you're trying to pick out, who could be influential in being part of this team. People love things like T-shirts and jackets and things that, they can kind of stand out and say, hey, I'm a part of this group. Even if it's something as simple as just a CPR first aid class, and, we address it during the class even, but even you guys can reiterate that, hey, you're doing this for work, but 80% of cardiac arrest, 80% of the time that somebody dies, they die at home. So really what we're teaching today, what the company's paying for today, there's a good chance you're going to use it at home on somebody you love, you care about. So it's a benefit. It's an added benefit really from work, and just kind of, putting that in their ear. And so even like, buying lunches or whatever as you're going through class, or just things to show that they're appreciated, to step up and do this kind of stuff. Talking about safety training. So, we kind of talked about, who is going to respond. Again, what trainings are they going to have? Obviously CPR is a good one, AED, first aid. If you're going to put them through things like first aid and even CPR and stuff, bloodborne pathogens ones is really important to have, because there's a high probability they could get exposed to blood, especially in first aid. And bloodborne pathogen is going to teach them how to protect themselves from any, potential pathogens they could pick up from blood, how to use proper PPE, how to clean up and disinfect and things like that. So it's a pretty important class. Obviously, fire extinguishers are really a good one to do. And then, like I said, any OSHA training that's pertinent to your company. If it's something that's that you guys deal with on like, hazmat, HAZWOP, or confined space, things that you guys do that are hazardous that you guys need to be trained on to keep your people safe. So the right tools. And really when I come down to the right tools, keep it pretty simple. AEDs and first aid kits. That's really it. And when we talk about first aid kits, there's lots of kits out there. All right, this is kind of a simple, mobile first aid kit. This is obviously something you would see mounted on the wall, your cabinets. They have all different kinds, right? 3 leveled ones, 5. It's just there's all kind of different cabinets out there, and they're required to have, right? You need to have those to meet the guidelines to protect and fulfill your needs for your employees. But if something really bad happens, this isn't going to do much for you, right? First, it's connected to the wall. And then, I got tweezers and, a little bit of gauze, and it's not, somebody like has an amputation, this ain't gonna get you real far, okay? So this is very important, but there's other things I would recommend to have. Here's just a mobile one. Sometimes you see these in trucks and things, obviously very important to have too, more of kind of like for those injuries and stuff, the smaller injuries. This is just another example of a bag. I do like something like this. It's mobile. I always recommend putting this kind of stuff with AEDs. It's obviously got a lot of stuff for bleeding control and traumas and things. That's a good thing to have. But one thing I want to introduce to you is we put together, I actually made this first aid kit before I started the business. So this was like 18 years ago. And what had happened was at that time, I wanted a first aid kit for my car and for my house and just, those kind of things. And I couldn't find anything to buy. It was all just kind of a junk. Like it was either it didn't have enough stuff in it or it had like way too much stuff in it. And they wanted way too much money for it. And it was kind of, even the one that had so much stuff in it really wasn't really what I wanted. And it's almost like they just dumped a bunch of stuff in it. And I think sometimes even if you have too much stuff, it can almost be overwhelming. You can't find the stuff you really want, right? And so I actually put this kit together and I called it a life safety kit instead of a first aid kit because everything in it has to do with about saving a life. And essentially you can treat major bleeding, allergic reactions, diabetic, heart attack, cardiac arrest, shock, muscle bone joint injuries, and infection control. And the reasons you can treat those things is because it has a tourniquet in it. It has Benadryl for allergic reactions. It has glucose for the diabetic. It has the exact dose of aspirin for a heart attack. It has a CPR mask for cardiac arrest. It has a shock blanket for shock. It has splinting stuff for muscle bone joint injuries. And it has obviously gloves, bio bags, face pieces, things for infection control to keep yourself safe. Okay, and it's a really small bag. It's very mobile. A lot of times we recommend putting these with your AEDs. Because to be completely honest with you, if you had something like this and your AED, there really isn't much you can't handle when it comes to treating a patient before EMS arrives. You're going to be able to get a pretty good jump start, okay? And again, we sell these things. They're completely customizable, but this is kind of what's in it. And if you guys want any advice on it, like we build custom kits, but if you even just want this stuff to kind of throw in your kit you currently have, or you want to go look at the kit that you have and say, is this stuff even in my kit right now? Any advice, please let us know. I mean, like I said, you can kind of build your own kit really, just based on these kind of recommendations. So quality, not quantity. Like I said, sometimes kits with lots of stuff, in the heat of an emergency, you're looking for the tourniquet, but you're like digging through thousands of pieces of gauze, and it's like, that's just in my way. I just need it to be clear cut. I can see everything. I know what I want. And obviously medicine cabinet, first aid kits are important, but kind of just play a different role. And then, like I said, the life safety kit. So AEDs. AED stands for automatic external defibrillator. I don't care what you call it, AED, defibrillator, they're interchangeable basically. And what an AED does is it truly saves lives, guys. When we go through CPR class, we talk about CPR sustains life until, we show up and do our thing, docs do their things. But AEDs actually correct what the heart's doing when somebody's in cardiac arrest and saves lives. So they're so important to get, and we'll talk a little bit why. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about sudden cardiac arrest versus heart attack. The reason is these two words, sometimes they get jumbled up a little bit. People get a little confused sometimes. So heart attack, symptoms. What are some symptoms you can think of? If somebody's having a heart attack, what might somebody complain of? Chest pain, big one, right? Elephant on my chest, crushing chest pain. What else? Numbness. Yeah, numbness, arm pain. Shortness of breath. Fatigue is a big one, absolutely. Yep. Nausea, vomiting, good. So chest pain's a big one. Shortness of breath, abdominal pain, back pain, jaw pain, arm pain, nausea, vomiting. Like I said, fatigue. There are passing out. There are a bunch of symptoms of a potential heart attack, but these are the most common you'll see. And sometimes people will complain of just one symptom. Sometimes they'll complain of multiple symptoms. And not everybody has chest pain when they're having a heart attack. Anybody know who out there doesn't always have chest pain when they're having a heart attack? Women. A lot of times what women present with is abdominal pain, back pain, jaw pain, nausea, fatigue. What's that sound like? Just being a woman, right? Like, I know. I'm not trying to start any fights, guys. I swear to you. It presents differently. And what it looks like a lot of times, it looks like the flu, right? It looks like the flu. That's why now on the back of my medic, if I pick up a woman that's over 30 years old with flu-like symptoms, I'm actually giving her a cardiac workup just to be safe. Because they don't present with those textbook signs that most guys do, right? So here's the heart. Heart's job is to push oxygenated blood throughout the body. What happens is we block these little vessels right here. That's what a heart attack is, okay? That's what we block. So no oxygen gets to that part of the tissue starts to die. Now, sudden cardiac arrest. What happens in sudden cardiac arrest is the electrical system in the heart malfunctions. So there's a signal sent from your brain all the way down to your heart and says, pump. That gets messed up. The heart unexpectedly beats very fast. So instead of being like, it goes like this, shakes violently, all right? And when it does that, it's called ventricular fibrillation, all right? And that's why we have a defibrillator, because your heart's fibrillating. It's shaking. It's quivering. When it's doing this, you're dead. There is no pulse. You can't breathe, all right? The victim becomes unconscious and does not have a pulse or any signs of circulation. So they're dead when this happens. And it can just be like, these are the stories you hear about, like marathon runner or basketball player run down the field and all of a sudden just die. A sudden cardiac arrest, all right? And there are 360,000 sudden cardiac arrests a year. It's crazy, right? And these are healthy people. It's just the way something happens, right? So if we can't prevent it, then we got to be able to treat it. We got to be able to treat it by doing CPR and AEDs. So what can I do for somebody that's in a cardiac arrest? I got to call 911, CPR, and then the AED. So this is actually a new app that's come out. They're kind of testing it more on west side of the country, but is essentially that, like, you can subscribe and they do this thing called Active 911 and actually can send you an alert and saying, like, hey, you're actually within, a couple hundred yards or whatever distance from somebody that's actually calling for an emergency, and you can actually help. So I don't know how that'll end up playing out, but kind of cool. So what are we going to do? Call 911, CPR, AED, do something. These AEDs, it's the only way to correct a heart that's fibrillating. They are easy to use, guys. There's actually a video of a 7-year-old using one of these. It was a training unit, but just saw, like, it just walks you through every step. It talks to you. There's displays. You can't shock somebody that doesn't need it, period. Okay, they're very safe. So here's an example of how it gets used.
I'll take over. You get the AED ready.
Call for help now. Remove all clothing from patient's chest. Pull red handle to open bag. Look at pictures on pads. Peel one pad off blue plastic. Apply pad to bare skin, exactly as shown in the picture. Press pad firmly. Peel other pad off blue plastic. Apply pad to bare skin, exactly as shown in the picture. Press pad firmly. Do not touch patient. Evaluating heart rhythm. Stand by. Preparing to shock. Everyone clear. Press flashing button.
All right. So you can see it talks to you. There's about a half dozen different brands. Some of them have displays. One of them has a one-piece pad, so you can't even, you almost can't mess up how the pads work. A couple of these AEDs now are giving you live. Several of them coach you through CPR. They tell you 30 to 2. And then actually a couple even give you live feedback. The Zoll, very popular. Actually, as you're doing compressions, it'll say push harder or good compressions. These things are amazing, all right? So when we talk about time, for every minute that goes by that you don't use an AED on somebody, their chance of survival decreases by 10%. And you think about it, if you have an AED and somebody goes down, you get it on the first 2 or 3 minutes, they got a 70, 80% chance of survival. If you wait till we show up 5 to 7 minutes later, they got a 50%, 30%. So that's why people have them and you see them all over the place. So while they're public access too, you see them all over the place, right? These are just some examples of different ones. That's that Zoll I was telling you about, very popular. That one that gives you live feedback on CPR. It's just a Philips model there, a Defibitech. Like I said, just different models. It's important to mount these things and label them with signs. You want them to stick out like a sore thumb. I remember going to a dentist office one time saying, hey, you got an AED? And first of all, everybody looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, yeah, we have one, but nobody knew where it was at. We finally found it locked in the women's bathroom closet. Like, complete waste of having an AED, right? So you want it to stick out like a sore thumb, okay? You want it out there for everybody to use and they know it's ready to go. Every AED is going to have electrodes or pads. There's going to be 2 of them, just like this. One goes high, one goes low, goes directly to the skin, bare chest, shirt comes off, bra comes off, directly to the skin, okay? It's going to send energy from one pad to the other. So that heart that's shaking like this, it's going to be it shocks it back to normal rhythm. That's how it works. So it will never happen to me or at my work. That's what this guy, Wes Rogers, probably thought. Guy come into work like a normal day, sits at his desk and starts making phone calls, and he goes into cardiac arrest. But the whole thing actually got caught on video.
My life has been fairly uneventful. I've been able to return to all of my previous activities and occupation, and I've had no residual effect from it, essentially.
Okay, I'll walk through. So he gets ready. He's going to go in cardiac arrest here in 1 second, right there. He goes into cardiac arrest. It was witnessed by the grace of God. Somebody was right by the door and probably heard him making some noises or something. So witnessed arrest. That helped big time. They called 911 immediately. Early notification of 911. Huge. They get him on the ground, and they immediately start early CPR. Huge. This is amazing, and this is just depends on where you're at sometimes. 4 minutes, they had a fire engine show up that was what's called an ACLS engine, which means it had paramedics on it and it had paramedic equipment on it. So they're getting ready to shock him here in a minute. They got the pads on. They're doing high quality CPR. They're putting a tube in him. So they're right here. Did you see him get shocked right there? They just shocked him. They did what's called an easy IO. We actually it's a drill. We actually drill into their leg, into their bone to give them medication. That's what they just did. Uninterrupted chest pain. You can see they're bagging. They have a tube into his airway and they're bagging for him. Everything looks like it's going textbook perfect. After 23 minutes of being down, unresponsive, no pulse, no breathing, he got his pulse back after 23 minutes of being down. So they package him up and they take him away. You can see it happen firsthand, right? How the whole process kind of goes. You never know. And you may be thinking to yourself, like right now, like the same thing, like, man, that's great, but I got a smaller company, and like, what are the odds? And it's happening. It's happening all the time, right? An example, I was telling you, this is a little bit older, over 350,000 people die from sudden cardiac arrest, more than all these things combined, stroke, lung cancer, breast cancer, and AIDS combined. And again, the only way we can't prevent it, it's treating it after the fact by CPR and AED use. So last thing I got for you, survival rates. I'll do this real quick. They did survival rates in different areas because of They did Rochester, Minnesota, because the Mayo Clinic in Seattle, because they were kind of cutting edge when it comes to CPR and AEDs as far as getting them out in the public. And so when they evaluated what the chance of survival is outside of the hospital, they came up with 46% and 62%. Okay, so if you're just walking down the street in, Rochester, Seattle, and you die on the street, you have a 50-50 chance of survival. That's pretty high, okay? Just ask, what do you think in Chicago and New York City? Big departments, very advanced in EMS also, and that kind of stuff. What would you say you think their percentage would be? Anybody throw something out there? 75. How about 3 and 5? Why? Lack of education, lack of equipment. Ohio has been very innovative the last couple of years. I think 3 years ago, they required that high school students now to graduate have to have CPR training. That's been something that's been going on in California and the East or West Coast for years. It's now required this last, 6 months ago, House Bill 47 required that parks and recs and facilities like that have to have AEDs. Okay? So that's the thing, is we're just catching up. Because once you get people trained and have the tools, their confidence goes up, they know what to do, they step in, they decide to help. These numbers is because nobody's stepping up to help, right? Okay? But we can change those numbers, right? That's doable. Well, in the mid-20s, yeah. So last thing I got for you. I ask you, are you ready? As you leave here, you drive back to your office, are you ready? Because just in this last hour, over 450 workers have been injured or suffered an illness in the last hour. It's happening. It's going to happen. It's never going to stop. Are you going to just roll the dice and say hopefully it doesn't happen to us, or are you going to be prepared? That's what it comes down to, all right? If you guys need anything, please do not hesitate to call and reach out. Obviously, we're running a company, but I'm just passionate about what we do. So if you just even need some advice or want to talk through something, or you've got something going on at your facility, safety related, I would love to help you out in any way I can. So please keep us in mind for that. Obviously, if you need training by any means, please reach out to us and we'll absolutely take care of you guys. So we do on-site, so we come to you guys, and we're nationwide now too, so we go everywhere.